Okay, we're going to solve some quadratic equations by factoring by the crisscross method and using the zero product rule. Okay, the crisscross method is going to be used to factor this trinomial where we're gonna identify the values of a, b, and c, the coefficients here. So you have a, b, and c. Okay, so let's double check here. We have a and c, which is 1 times 4. So I'm just going to label this here for now. That product is 4. And the value of b here is going to be 5. Okay, so we're going to put 5 here. And the sum. All right, and let's go make sure this is consistent here. Okay, so we need two numbers multiplied together whose product is 4 here, but whose sum is 5. Now the product is always going to be this a times c, the a value times the c value in your trinomial. Okay. And the b value will always be the sum. So we need actually two numbers multiplied together that gives us a product of 4 and a sum of 5. So if you think about that, 4 and 1. And sometimes I write it this way. We need the product to be 4 and the sum to be 5. Now 4 times 1 will certainly give us a product of 4, and 4 plus 1 gives us a sum equal to 5. And so those are the two numbers. These are the values that we're going to use here. Okay, this is called the crisscross method. It's a factoring method of a trinomial. And ladies and gentlemen, you're simply going to put x, there's the product. This is a quadratic. This equals 0. So we're looking at the a, b, c values by the crisscross method here. And now the numbers found here. Let's get the right highlighter. They're going to go here. Okay, so that's positive 4 and positive 1. So you have factored, ladies and gentlemen, by the crisscross method. Okay, so that is already factored. Now, the zero product rule, we're going to write that down. We're going to solve this quadratic. And let's write down the zero product rule. There's a couple of ways we could look at it. We can say if a times b equals 0, if you ever multiply two numbers equal to 0, then that means either of the numbers were 0. So it means either a was 0 or b is 0. This is called the zero product rule. Okay, so let's share with you guys how this works. Okay, we'll say pink is A, and I guess we'll use brown. Brown is B, so that means either A is equal to 0 or it means B is 0. Either the first term is 0 or the second term is 0. This is called the zero product rule. All right. Okay, so very often we break out this t here. So if we're going to go back up here, let's kind of get rid of all of this. And I guess we can move it down. And we can say to you, we're going to use this crisscross method, I guess. Okay, so what that means is this portion here is going to be the A, this first portion here. Let's get rid of this color. So here's the A. Here's the B. So you set both of those terms equal to 0, and you solve for x. So we'll say here x plus 4 is 0, or x plus 1 equals 0. So you're going to subtract 4 from both sides, and you end up getting x is negative 4. That's one solution. Subtract 1 from both sides, and you get x is negative 1. So ladies and gentlemen, you have solved this quadratic. The solutions are negative 4 and negative 1 by factoring using the crisscross method, okay? And that's the method that we're going to focus on in this demonstration. Okay, and you have a quadratic. So this is what you're using to factor. And then this is what you're using over here, the zero product rule, to solve the quadratic. So let's make sure that's clear. All right. Okay, so this is what we're going to do today for this. This is a review for those students that need this review in class. And, you know, we're going to have some fun solving quadratics by factoring and using the crisscross method. Now, remember, I didn't write it in the first example, but you're looking at a trinomial where you have ax squared plus bx plus c. This is what we did up here. Okay, this is really the first demonstration. Now let's go into a little bit more detail. Okay, we're going to get out that crisscross method. I usually do my algebra in purple, as you guys know. And lately I've been using the orange. This is the a value. This is the c value, right? So I need a product whose AC, and that's 1 times 30. Okay, so that's going to be 1 times 30, which will be 30. Okay. Because A is 1 and C is 30. They're right here. Okay, here's going to be the A value, the B value, and the C value. So 1 times 30 is 30. This is my product. I'm going to need two numbers whose product is A times C. And the sum needs to be the B value. So my B value, ladies and gentlemen, is right here in green, positive 11. So the sum needs to be 11. So we can write down the product has to equal 30. And the sum needs to be positive 11. So again, I need two numbers multiplied together is 30, and whose sum is 11, because what I'll be doing is I will be factoring this trinomial here. Okay, we're factoring this right in here. Okay, and if we think about it, looks like 6 and 5 might be the numbers. So let's check. 6 times 5 equals 30. And 6 plus 5 is 11. So sure enough, those are the numbers. Now, just place this with the x. Here's your format. Don't forget, this is the left side of this equation is a quadratic that needs to be factored, and the right side equals 0 here. Okay, so There it is. We're just going to have to place those two numbers that we found, the 6 and the 5, here and here. So that 6 is positive, so we put plus 6. The 5 is positive, so we put plus 5. We're putting these two numbers that we found, 6 and 5, the crisscross method. Okay, so the left side of the equation right over here is now factored. Okay, that's the whole idea. Now, the zero product rule comes in, and we're going to solve this factored quadratic. The left side of the equation is factored. So by the zero product rule again, we're going to say this x plus 6 portion is 0, because I believe that was pink in our zero product rule. Okay, that is the pink portion, and then the brown portion is over here as an x plus 5. So I get x plus 5 is 0. All right. Now let's solve each linear equation. Subtract 6 from both sides from the first one. Subtract 5 from both sides from the second one. We'll now get x is negative 6. X is negative 5. And ladies and gentlemen, you are done. There's your two solutions. X is negative 6. X is negative 5. We have factored the left side. We have solved this quadratic equation. Okay. We're going to factor the left side of the equation. This is again a quadratic. There we go. Bring it back. We need the values of a, b, and c. So a here is 1, b is positive 3, and c is negative 4. So we want to get the product here. So we're going to look for 1 times negative 4. And that product, ladies and gentlemen, is negative 4. A times c is what we're looking at here. So, okay. Crisscross method. A times c, 1 times negative 4 will be negative 4. And b, the b value is positive 3 here. All right, so a times c is negative 4. B is positive 3. We're going to put the numbers right in there. And remember, this portion here is the product. This is the sum. So we need two numbers now multiplied together whose product is negative 4, but yet whose sum is positive 3. All right. So one of the numbers has to be positive, and the other number has to be negative, because that's the only way you can multiply two numbers together, right? And have the answer be product. Be negative. I'm looking at the product here. It's the only way. Positive times a negative, or a negative times a positive. That will give us a negative answer because the product is negative here. Okay, so if we think about this and think about this, it looks like positive 4 times negative 1 gives us the product of negative 4, but 4 plus negative 1 will give us the sum of positive 3. So the numbers are positive 4 and negative 1 in the crisscross method of factoring. Okay, this is our crisscross method. Now, the left side, your equation then, when factored, we're going to use that information. And it equals 0 because this is an equation here. So it's only the left that we're factoring. And it's going to be these numbers here that we just found. This is what we're going to do. We place them here, we place them here. So this is the crisscross method. That 4 is positive, and we have a -1 there. So these are the numbers found in the crisscross method. We have factored the trinomial. But we also have to solve this. This is where the zero product rule comes in. So by the zero product rule, we're going to go back, take a look. This is our zero product rule. Multiply two things together and it equals 0. That means either of those things were 0. So I'll use the colors again. A times B equals 0. And this is what this means now. X plus 4 equals 0. Or x minus 1 equals 0. So subtract 4 from both sides. You get x is -4. Add 1 to both sides, and you get x is +1. So, ladies and gentlemen, x is -4, or x is +1, and there it is. We solved another quadratic equation here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so we're solving quadratics by the crisscross method, okay? Meaning you have to factor by the crisscross method and then use the zero product rule to solve your trinomial. Now, again, A, B, and C are identified, okay? So by the crisscross method, we are going to solve, I should say, first factor. I'm going to factor that left-hand side, this trinomial, and then use the zero product rule to solve the equation because that equals 0. So product here. Okay, we're going to have to take A times C, which is 1 times 20. So A times C is actually 20 here. Okay. Here's the A value. Here's the C value. All right. And then the B value in the middle is -9. That's my B value. It's right here. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, we need the product to equal +20 and your sum to equal -9. We need two numbers multiplied together, a product who is positive, but yet a sum that's negative. Now, the only way that can happen is this. Remember, if you take a positive times a positive, the answer is positive, but the sum of two positive numbers is positive. That's a sum here. So the sum in this case is negative, and it can't be that. There's another way that a product of two numbers can be positive, and that's if they're both negative. Okay? And notice what happens when I add two negatives, the answer is negative. So both of these numbers are going to need to be negative. And that's what's happening in this example. They're both negative. So multiply two numbers together whose product is 20, positive, but when added is -9. It's going to be -4 times -5. Let's double check. -4 times -5 is +20, and -4 plus -5 will be negative what? 9. And ladies and gentlemen, here are the two numbers. And they go right here. So this would be x minus 4 and x minus 5. So you factored, which is what you see here on the left-hand side. So we factored there. But we have a quadratic equation. that trinomial equals 0. So we use the zero product rule to get our solutions. So now, ladies and gentlemen, by the zero product rule, and I guess we want to make sure that's kind of straight. All right. Okay, zero product rule all the way up here. It looks like it's making me a little dizzy here. Here's our zero product rule up here. Okay. So we're going to get rid of some of this, and we're going to get out our pink, because remember, I put the first number in pink, and maybe we want to get rid of even the red. And we say, here's the first number in pink times the second number in gold or brown, and that equals 0. And so what that means is that first number, which is x minus 4, is 0, or the second number, which is x minus 5, is 0. Either of the numbers must be 0. First number, second number. Now add 4 to both sides. It's not right. Add 4 to both sides for the first one, and then add 5 to both sides for the second one. Now you get x will be 0 plus 4, which is 4, or 0 plus 5, which is 5. So, ladies and gentlemen, x is 4 or x is 5 is the solution here. Okay, so we solved this quadratic by factoring with the crisscross method and using the zero product rule to solve your remaining work there. X is 4 and x is 5. Okay. Let's try this again. A, B, C. We are factoring. Okay, that left side there. This is a quadratic equation because this is equal to 0. We're going to use that crisscross method. So, okay. Two numbers multiplied together is AC. That's 1 times negative 18. And that answer is going to be negative 18. So we have A times C again. You have your A value, your C value here and here. Multiply them, and it gets to be negative 18. That product. The B value right in the middle here is negative 7. So negative 7 is your B value. Product is negative 18, and sum is negative 7. So let's think about this here, because there's two situations where a product is negative. That's a positive times a negative will give me a negative, or a negative times a positive will give me a negative. So one of the numbers is going to be negative. But when I add the numbers, it has to be a negative 7. So this is the only clue I have here, when I multiply. So two numbers multiplied together is negative 18. It looks like it's going to be negative 9 times positive 2. Let's double check. Negative 9 times positive 2 is negative 18. And then negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Those are the numbers. That's what we need. Okay, so the left side of my equation is x minus 9, and the right side is, still on the left side is x plus 2, because we had two terms. So let me show you with colors. That's the reason we got those two numbers, -9 and +2. It's a quadratic equation. We just factored by the crisscross method. That's factoring. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's solve here by using the zero product rule, because I have a product of two numbers. It's really two terms, and it equals 0, which means the first term is 0 or the second term is 0. So you have x minus 9 equals 0, and you have x plus 2 equals 0. Add 9 to both sides, and ladies and gentlemen, you get x is 9. Subtract 2 from both sides, and you get x will be -2. And ladies and gentlemen, you are done. There it is. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. X is 9 or x is -2. So you've solved this quadratic equation by factoring. Now, all 5 of these equations are very special. I just want to say something about that. All 5 of these equations are done the same way. They're all in the form, really, x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, what I did here for you guys is I did put the letter a in front of the x squared term. And in every one of these problems, a was actually +1. So you had a, you had b. So really, ladies and gentlemen, I gave you the way we generally do this, which is good because you're going to compare these first 5 with the next 5. And the procedure is still very similar. We're going to use the crisscross procedure, but I want to point out this detail. Maybe I jumped ahead. It's okay to point this detail out now, because notice again, the a value is 1 again. So it's okay to point that out now. And we're going to compare with the next question. So here's B and here's C. But it doesn't look like it's letting me. I guess I'm scrolling in a little too much. A, B, C. Okay, so A here, it's good to maybe notice this now, is +1 and C is +21. All right. And of course, your B value is -10. So by the crisscross method, this is going to be the factoring technique for the trinomial on the left side of your equation. And yes, it's a quadratic because it equals 0. So we're just factoring the left side. And crisscross. Product is AC. So 1 times 21 is what? 21. And then -10 is your B value. So here's the deal. We need two numbers multiplied together is +21. But when added is -10. So let's write some of this down. The product is 21. Sum is -10. Okay. So we're in that situation again where let's think about this. A positive times a positive is positive, but when we add two positive numbers, the sum is positive. And that can't be because our sum has to be negative. So a negative times a negative is also positive, but when we add two negative numbers, it'll be a negative sum. So that's the route we're going to have to take. Both numbers have to be negative. So let's think about this. Is -3 times -7 +21? Yes, it is, because a negative times a negative is a negative. And then -3 plus what? Negative 7 is negative 10. Okay, so we found the numbers. X is negative 3, or x minus 3, and x minus 7. That's the left-hand side. We have just factored by the crisscross method. But we have a quadratic because that equals 0. So here's where the negative 3 goes, and here's the negative 7 goes. So we have x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 7 equals 0. So now we're going to add 3 to both sides. We're going to add 7 to both sides, and now we get x equals positive 3, or x equals positive 7. These are our two solutions. And this is, again, factoring by the crisscross method and using together the zero product rule. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Two solutions. X is positive 3, x is positive 7. And it looks like that's the last example where a is 1, because the rest of the examples are going to have a different a value. It's not going to be 1. We're going to factor the left side by the crisscross method. This is a quadratic. We're going to solve this quadratic by factoring. Okay, so let's point out this detail. This is my a value, it's 2. My b value is 13, and my c value is 20. So this is a different situation, although I've been approaching it, or I will approach it the same way. But let's see how this changes here. So I want to really point out a detail. A in this case is 2 now. It's not 1. That's going to be an interesting situation here for us. Let's take a look here. Okay. Crisscross method still has the product of a times c, but this time it's 2 times 20, which gives you a 40. So I want to point out that first part here. Your b value is still the same kind of b. It'll be 13. However, look at your a times c now. A times c, 2 times 20 is 40. So again, still, we need two numbers whose product will be 40 and whose sum will be positive 13. Two numbers multiplied together. Product is positive 40, but whose sum is 13. Now, a is 2. A is not 1. This is the first example where that happens. So we need those two numbers. And you say, well, what could those numbers be? Okay, well, they're both positive, product and sum. So what that means is both of the numbers need to be positive. So I think 8 times 5 is 40. And then 8 plus 5 will be positive 13. Looks like those are the numbers. So we're going to have a what? An 8 and a 5. So the left side, again, we have x plus 8 times x plus 5. But this is a quadratic. And let me say, this is where the procedure is a little different here. Okay? Since the a value is not 1 and the a value is 2 here, right? We know a is 2 now. This is what we need to do with the crisscross method. We're going to go to the two numbers we found here and divide by a. This is a. You have to divide by a. And in this case, a is 2. Now, when you perform the division here, you have x plus 8 divided by 2. Well, that's going to be a nice whole number like 4. That's 8 divided by 2. However, for the second one, you got 5 divided by 2. That'll give you a decimal. Now, what you do with this method is this. Since you don't get a nice whole number or integer value, you're going to move that a value in front of the x, meaning your 2 goes here now. And you put your x plus 5. This is the crisscross method. Okay, so you're going to move that 2 because that'll give you 5 halves as a decimal value. Now you have factored. You're done. But this is a quadratic and it equals 0. You're trying to solve, but you did factor. So this is the crisscross method of factoring when a is not 1. And I want to make sure you understand that because sometimes a is 1 and sometimes a is not 1. In this case, a is not 1, a is 2. But this is the factored trinomial version of that, trinomial, I should say. It's the factored version of the trinomial. X plus 4 times 2x plus 5. Now, since it equals 0, we got to use that zero product rule because we're solving a quadratic. And now we're free to use the zero product rule. Okay, remember this. You got a number or a term times another and it equals 0. So that means x plus 4 equals 0 and it means 2x plus 5 equals 0. You're going to solve for x. You're going to subtract 4 from both sides. You get x is negative 4 here. Subtract 5 from both sides, and you get 2x is negative 5. Divide both sides by 2. X is going to equal negative 5 halves. And ladies and gentlemen, x is negative 4. And x is negative 5 halves. These are your two solutions. There it is, number 7. You notice again, A, B, C, and you say, in this case again, A is not 1. A is positive 2. So we're going to use the crisscross method. Meaning 2 times 12, we have to have that product of AC again. And 2 times 12 will give you, let's move it up, 24. Your B value is negative 11. Here's your B value. Okay, so let's write it all down for us again. We need two numbers whose product will be A times C, which is 24, but the sum is negative. So we're in that situation again where the product is positive and the sum is negative. So that can only happen if both of the numbers are negative. Because a negative times a negative is a positive, but when you add two negative numbers, you will always get a negative as well. So that's good. It's good to know. We just have to find both of those numbers. And so I think negative 8 times negative 3. Let's double check. Negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. And negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. So sure enough, we are good to go. All right, good. This is factoring the trinomial that's on the left side of this equation here. It's quadratic. So let's write down the information like we've been doing. And let's not forget that a is positive 2. Yes, that'll equal 0. We're not done. We always have to divide both of those numbers by a. And again, a is positive 2. So I always divide those two numbers found here and here by the a value. And 8 divided by 2 now is going to be 4, but there's a negative sign or subtraction already in front. And then you have a problem with the next one, because 3/2 is not a whole number. You're going to get a decimal again. So because of that, you're going to move that number in front of this x. There's going to be a 2 here now. And you get x minus 3. And that'll equal 0. So you factored the left-hand side. Again, this is the crisscross method. You solve this by factoring. This is the portion you factored. X minus 4 times 2x minus 3. That's factoring the trinomial of 2x squared minus 11x plus 12. But it is an equation. It's a trinomial equal to 0. So now we get to use that zero product rule. Now, maybe you forgot about it. I'm going to go all the way back and bring it out. In case you forgot. Okay, where, again, the first term in pink is x minus 4, and the second term in brown is 2x minus 3, and the product equals 0. You get x minus 4 equals 0, and you get 2x minus 3 equals 0. Okay. Add 4 to both sides, and 0 plus 4 is 4. Subtract 3 from both sides, you get 2x is negative 3. Divide both sides by 2, and you get x is negative 3/2. X is positive 4, and x is negative 3/2. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We factored by the crisscross method, and we use the zero product rule to solve this trinomial equation. It's a quadratic equation, and this will be a useful review for all of you in the future here. Okay, let's do another. All right. Solving another quadratic equation by using the crisscross method to factor your trinomial. So let's identify the values again. A, B, C. A is 4, B is negative 3, C is negative 1. So we need two numbers multiplied together whose product, well, let's see, I'm sorry. AC, that's the product. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And then B is negative 1. Okay, there's a negative 1 here in front of that X term. So take a look, ladies and gentlemen. I'll get out the colors. AC, negative 12. B, negative 1. All right. Okay, let's write this down. So you need two numbers whose product is negative 12, whose sum is negative 1. So we need two numbers. Product is negative 12, sum negative 1. So let's think about it. A negative times a positive will give me a negative as a product. A positive times a negative will give me a negative as a product. So one of the numbers is positive, the other is negative. But they are going to differ by a 1, it looks like. So I think negative 4 times 3 will work. Negative 4 times positive 3 is negative 12. Negative 4 plus 1, I'm sorry, I'm already doing the arithmetic. Negative 4 plus 3 will give me a negative 1. Those are the numbers. Good. Okay. X minus 4 times x plus 3 will equal 0. So negative 4, positive 3 goes here. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Two numbers multiply together. I'm going to use the zero product rule. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring it out again just to remind people this is what we're doing. Got to finish the factoring here. So let's kind of erase this. Can. Got to finish our factoring. Let's remember here. Okay, here's negative 4. Here's positive 3. I didn't write it down, but my A value is 4. A is not equal to 1. A is 4. So because of that, I have to divide both of the numbers that I found by a 4 here. I always divide by that A value. And what I look for now is whether I get a whole number when I divide. In the first case, 4 divided by 4 is 1. Yes, there's a negative sign there, but I can ignore it. And in the second case, we know that 3 divided by 4 is not a whole number. That'll be a decimal. That's 0.75. So I'm going to have to move that term, that 4, in front of my x. I move the 4, and now, ladies and gentlemen, the left side of my equation is now factored by the crisscross method, and that was the whole idea. Factor the left side, your quadratic, the trinomial. So now it's factored. Okay. And again, now we could use the we could use the zero product rule. I think I still have it. There we go. So I have the pink term right here and the brown term over here, and this is what we're going to get. Okay, I think I'm going to bring it down. Okay. And let's bring out that crisscross method. X minus 1 equals 0, or 4x plus 3 equals 0. X minus 1 or 4x plus 3. So now we're going to add 1 to both sides, and we get x equals positive 1. Subtract 3. 4x is negative 3. Divide both sides by 4, and we get x equal to negative 3/4. And there you go. Okay, here's another example where a is not 1. So let's kind of write that down now. We know a is not 1 in this example. We know a is what? 3. Okay. So we need the product of a and c now. 3 times 10 will give us 30. The sum is negative 17. That's B. So let's look for the colors again. 3 and 10 is 30. Negative 17 is that B value. So we need two numbers again whose product is 30 and whose sum is negative 17. Two numbers multiply together, product is 30, sum is negative 17. The only way we can have a sum be negative and a product be positive is if both of the numbers were negative. See, a negative times a negative will be a positive, but a negative plus a negative will also be negative. So I need two numbers multiplied together. Both have to be negative. Product is 30 and positive 30 at that, yet the sum is negative 17. And it looks like it's going to be negative 15 times negative 2. Negative 15 times negative 2 is positive 30. Negative 15 plus negative 2 is negative 17. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. These are the two numbers. Okay. So we're going to write down again x minus 15 times x minus 2, and that product will equal 0. Don't forget the a value here is 3. So we're going to divide both of those numbers by that positive 3. $15 divided by 3 is 5, and then 2 divided by 3 is a decimal. I'm going to move that up. So it's really 3x minus 2. You have factored by the crisscross method. Remember, this is a decimal. 2/3 will be a 0.67, approximately. So that's not a whole number. We got to move that 3 right up here. Okay. Now, we're going to bring in the zero product rule here again. Because what you have is the first term in pink times the second term in brown will equal 0. Okay. So now we have x minus 5 by the zero product rule equals 0, or (3x minus 2) equals 0. So you have the first term here equals 0 times the second term equal to 0. So you're going to add 5 to both sides, and you get 0 plus 5, and that means x is 5. And over here, you're going to add 2 to both sides, and you'll get 3x is 2. Divide both sides by 3, and x will be 2/3 here. Okay, there you go. X is 5 or x is 2/3. Zero product rule, number 10. All right, number 11. Again, A here is not 1, so we're going to write that down now. A is not 1. A is 5. A, B, C. So, two numbers whose product is A times C. So that's 5 times -2, which will be -10. The sum will be B. So we got A times C here, which is -10, and then the sum is -3 here. It's your B value. Okay. So, again, product is -10. Sum is -3. We need two numbers multiplied together. Product is negative, so that means it's a negative times a positive, which will give you a negative, or a positive times a negative, which will give you a negative. So one of them's negative, the other is positive. So two numbers whose product is -10 and whose sum is -3. It looks like that might be -5 times +2. Let's double check. -5 times +2 is -10. -5 plus 2 is -3. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are your numbers. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so A is 5. A is not 1. So let's go through the procedure again by that crisscross method. Okay, and yes, it equals 0. So the A value now, go back, is that +5. It's not 1. So if A is +5 and not 1, we're going to divide those two numbers we found by that +5. And sure enough, you get a nice whole number, x minus 1, and then 2/5 is a decimal. You're going to bring that 5 up here in front of the x. There goes your 5. X plus 2, and then that'll equal 0. So the left-hand side again is factored by the crisscross method. Okay, that trinomial is factored. All right. However, we have a quadratic equation to solve. So we're going to use the zero product rule now. The first term again is in pink. The second term is in brown here. So if I multiply two numbers together and it equals 0 by the zero product rule, that means either of those numbers must be 0. I'm going to move this down so we have more space. So ladies and gentlemen, first term is 0. Second term is 0. Okay. We got two linear equations to solve. Add 1 to both sides. We get x is 1. Here we have to do 2 steps. Subtract 2 from both sides, and we get 5x equals negative 2. Divide both sides by 5. You're going to get x equal to negative what? 2/5. So x is 1. X is negative 2/5. There you go. All right, there it is, number 11. Now, I believe this is the last one. This is the last example that I did. Hope you guys are enjoying this review of solving quadratics by factoring, in particular, solving quadratics by the crisscross method and the zero product rule. A is not 1 again, so we're going to do that all over for you guys. A is not 1. A here is 6. So we're going to need those terms again. We're going to need the what? The A, the B, the C. Now, A times C is 6 times negative 1 again, which will give you negative 6. And then your B value is positive 1. So, okay. A times C, negative 6. Your A is here. Here, B is positive 1. So, okay, A is not 1. A is going to be 6. So we need 2 numbers whose product will be, all right, let's see, 2 numbers whose product is negative 6. And whose sum is positive 1. So the only 2 ways to multiply 2 numbers and get a product be negative is if one of those numbers was negative. Okay? Product is negative 6 here. Sum is positive. One of the numbers has to be negative. And I think 3 and negative 2 might work. Because 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, but 3 plus negative 2 is positive 1. So looks like I found the numbers here. Okay, good. 3 and negative 2. Okay. So we're going to continue to complete our factoring technique, the crisscross method. X plus 3 times x minus 2, and because A here, ladies and gentlemen, is 6, we're going to divide both of these numbers found by that 6. 3 and negative 2. Divide them both by 6. What you will find looks like decimals on both cases. 3/6 is 0.5, so I'm going to have to move the 6 up in front of this x. 2/6 is 1/3, which will give me 0.33. So I have to move that 6 in front of the x. So both have to be moved. I get 6x plus 3 and 6x minus 2 equals 0. 6x plus 1 minus 1. Let's double check. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. B is 1. Something's bothering me. I think we have to reduce these. I apologize. We have to reduce our fractions. Okay? There it is. That's what's bothering me. So 3/6 is 1/2. 2/6 is 1/3. There we go. Now we're fine. I said, wait a minute, something's very wrong. Yes, you must reduce your fraction. 3/6 and 2/6. So 3/6 is 1/2. 2/6 is 1/3. But still you have a problem because 1/2 is 0.5 as a decimal. I'm going to have to move the 2 in front of the x. 1/3 is 0.3 as a decimal. I have to move the 3 in front of this x. Alrighty. Great example. Okay. So this becomes 2x plus 1 times 3x minus 1. Yes, you have to reduce those fractions. Now we have factored. Let's find the right color. It's gone, or gray. We factored by the crisscross method. We factored this left side of the equation, 6x squared plus x minus 1. It's a quadratic equation. It equals 0, so we're solving by factoring, but we're factoring by the crisscross method, where a is not 1, a is 6. And all right, now we get to bring out the zero product rule. So the first term is in pink. Second term is in brown. That product equals 0. We multiply these together. Here's what you end up. 2x plus 1 equals 0, or 3x minus 1 is 0. Okay. Subtract 1 from both sides, you get 2x is negative 1. Add 1 to both sides, we'll get 3x is 1. The first equation, we have to divide both sides by a positive 2, and we get x is negative 1/2. The second equation, we divide both sides by 3, and we get x will be positive 1/3. And then, ladies and gentlemen, x is negative 1/2, x is positive 1/3. You have solved these quadratics by factoring and using the zero product rule. Okay, just want to make sure that's negative. I mean, we don't have to use red. These are my two solutions, but we used, again, the very, very popular and famous crisscross method. And that ends our review, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review and that you use this in your future. Yes, it's a factoring strategy that is very, very, very effective. I don't know what happened to this little thing over here. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, take care, stay safe, have a wonderful day. We'll see you later.